Mike Draper, owner, founder of Raygun, the greatest t-shirt, the greatest t-shirt store in the
Greatest store
world.
in the universe.
Greatest store in the
Yeah.
universe. Sorry, I was
Suck on that,
narrowing
Mars.
it way down.
Yeah. We thought about greatest on Earth, but then right around the time we were coming up with the slogan, they found like
A
bacteria
t-shirt
on
store
Mars.
on.
And
Oh,
we
they
were like,
found.
yeah, if those bacteria start printing t-shirts, we're gonna have an intellectual property dispute. So we like blew it up larger.
And the reason that people will know that, and the reason why people should be watching us and not just listening to us, is that we are all currently wearing Raygun shirts.
We are.
It would be embarrassing if I was the only one not wearing one. But yeah.
I had that thought. I was like, what if Mike shows up like in some vintage t-shirt, like a really cool one, but actually not a Raygun shirt? But that no, what you want to know is that Mike and I are fans going back. Like, I lived in Minneapolis for 10 years. And I consider myself completely bicoastal, which is to say from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. I've lived in Chicago, Minneapolis, and in Texas. So Central Time Zone.
You've covered the entire Central Standard Time Zone.
Yeah, which I do want to put a push in for Raygun to extend southward in its coverage, so that
if we went, we've Oklahoma's a gray area. Texas is probably like a bridge too far. Austin's kind of a wild city.
You can't jump. Like, you can't jump.
Yeah, I know. We got to stay where we are.
Mike, should we ask our first question?
Now, Mr. Draper, you can answer this question on behalf of your personal situation or behalf of Raygun Enterprises. I'm not sure what the name of the company is, but just in terms of this feeling, when's the last time you were worried about covering your monthly expenses?
So you guys have found me at one of the best stretches in that we've been having kind of a good year since about this time last year. But I should point out that over the 21 years of running this, the concern about cash is so seared into my brain that my cortisol levels spiked when I saw the email for this show because it said Raygun pass due. I was like, fuck, my God, man, what voice?
Wow.
And so this is the end of the month. It's, tomorrow is May 1st. And at the end, once a month, the bookkeeper and I will do like the bank accounting cash thing. And I have this document on my desktop that goes all the way back to 2010. And it's just credits, debits, start of the month, end of the month, major expenses. And I actually turned over the banking stuff to her a couple of years ago because I was checking the bank stuff so much. It's profit loss, all of that, EBITDA, throw it all out the window. All it is cash. And over the last 15 years, Raygun has added cash 7 of those years, lost cash 8 of those years. On our About Us page, we actually have a line from our bank statement 2005 where I was down to like $2,300. And that was the first time we almost ran out of money. Then we almost ran out of money again in 2011. And the most memorable is, February of 2018, where we had about $36,000 in the bank, which would be a lot if that was my personal bank account, but that was Raygun's bank account. And our monthly expenses are about $380,000 that month.
Wow.
And I had to get an emergency line of credit from the bank, and our debt reached about $900,000 that month. So we were just totally maxed out, like underwater, disproportionate to that. On top of that, my wife was hospitalized with what would start to be what was the beginning of kind of like a long-term health issue. In addition to that, we had just had our 4th child, who was 3 months old, and then 3 other kids who were 3, 6, and 9. So I leave my wife at the hospital one night, take the 3-month-old back to my house, where now I have to like wean her off of breastfeeding over the course of 2 sleepless nights to get her to drink from like a bottle. And my older kids are staying with my parents outside Des Moines. And then that week, because payroll is due, a few days later, I have to go to the bank and be like, fucking stuff's going awesome, guys. And let me in on the ground floor of expanding our line of credit by $300,000. You're going to want to hear this. And, the banker, we had banked with the same people for a while, and not a lot of people are like, oh, I fucking love banker. And investment bankers are what, but small community bankers, he was like, well, you know what? We trust. And it is like, I will use the same bank forever. Like, they can charge me any amount of interest because it's like they actually lended assistance when I needed it. And so secured the line of credit, made payroll. But the next week I bumped into a friend of mine. He was like, how's it going? And I was like, I have reached the terminal velocity of stress. I'm like, I'm almost in this Zen state where I am so fucked if things go haywire, like my wife's condition, the kids, the store, personal money, everything. That the pressure that you're under in that moment is indescribable.
Yeah.
And it's knowing that it's not like, and then it was fine. That was the start of an 18 to 20 month just slog to get things back on track. And at the end of that year, I had to sell 15% of the company to non-managing members, but it was like friends, family, that type of stuff. And that was the money to sell, to pay a portion of the line of credit, to then we had to open another store. And people are like, but you're opening another store? And it's like, well, once you're kind of in that, you can't, it's that classic line when you're going through hell, keep going. You're like, there would have been no way for us to stay in business without increasing top line revenue. And we had to increase top line revenue to, and so it's such backwards math. And you're like, I'm selling more, but making less. If I keep going on this direction, I'm going to be bankrupt in 2 years. But the idea is that no, but if we reach this next level, then we'll keep going up. And it's just indescribable. And I think some small business owners are disappointed to hear this because that was 2018. I've been running the store for 13 years.
Wow.
And other small business owners are like, wait a minute, what? You still worry about money? And I was like, oh God, that's all I worry about. And they're like, shit, I thought that would stop at some point. You're like, no, it's the same thing. And it was a shittier feeling because, 2018, we were fairly high profile, like Hillary Clinton had been in the store in 2016, Ed Sheeran had shopped here. We were a well-known entity with multiple stores. If it had failed in 2005, people would have been like, well, at least you tried. Lots of startups failed. If it had failed in 2018, people would have been like, what a dipshit. Like that place was printing money. He must have totally mismanaged it or had a drug problem. Or from the outside, if you'd walked into the store in 2018, you would have just been like, look at this place. It's so big and it's popular and there's people in here and everybody's buying stuff. I'm going to start a company just like this. And if you had peeled back the hood, you would have been like, oh no, I'm like $800,000 underwater. It's like this place is running on fumes right now. But, that's what it is. You're either going to be stressed in life because you're being controlled or you're stressed because you're in control. But there is no way to ameliorate stress. You're just picking which one. And I picked being in control of this operation, which means I have to take that stress on. And I can always leave and go into an organization where I'm not in charge, but you're just, you're replacing one thing with the other. I do think that a lot of like creatives now are feeling that, I don't know, I was thinking about it more listening to your guys' other shows of when you are a creative inside of an entity, whether it's working at a newspaper, part of a major record label, that type of thing, there is some stress from feeling like, well, I can't do what I want to do. I'm being controlled. But then now a lot of those people have grown into the world of now they're in control and there's a different type of stress. And that what before the newspaper had handled the sales and the marketing and you just did the stories, now everybody has to do the stories and the sales and the marketing. Similarly with music. And it's just, but other times it's also recognizing, it's work and circumstance. And I fucking hate it when people use the phrase like self-made. And people will talk about that all the time. They're self-made. You're a self-made man. And it's like, yeah, upper middle class white guy from great town with great family made good. What are the odds? And I was just like, my parents didn't give me the company, but I graduated debt free from college. Why? Because my parents paid for it. So right out of the gate, I didn't have like a monthly loan payment to make, which looking back on it, you could say, well, that's just a few $100s a month. But
Oh
when I
no.
first was running out of money, you're down to $2,300. It's like loan payments, medical emergency, something like that could have sunk the company. So the company has not succeeded purely through my sheer will and work. There were a lot of these inflection points where if it had gone differently, circumstances are out of my control. At the same time, the idea to sell shirts was a buddy of mine in college. He suggested that we start selling t-shirts. I learned how to screen print from another friend of mine. A friend of mine mentioned that I should move back to Des Moines to open the store. A lot of the biggest ideas for this place I didn't have. I executed on them once they came to me, but it's hard for me to get real confident about my own abilities when I realize that I'm just part of the equation and I work hard at my part of it, but I need other people to play their part. I need to be open to other ideas. And then there is this huge, from health to economic circumstances to everything that is just totally out of your control.
Yeah.
And so you want to just consider yourself lucky that it's gone this way. I can really only explain 80% of Raygun. I'm like along for the ride with everybody else, and I also hope it continues. But the idea that I have some, all powerful force that is able to direct this place where I want it to go, no way.
So yes, so you focus on the Midwest. You are deeply embedded there in Des Moines. You are a local store as well as the best store in the universe. And I'm going to set us up just so people know how you got on the show.
Oh,
but then we're going to sidebar that conversation a little bit. That we connected because Raygun moved its store newsletter, which is the greatest newsletter in the universe.
Yep, Brandy.
To Substack, and I have opinions about Substack, as everyone who listens to this podcast knows. But we went from being like a dyad in the middle of a storm. Like, I think you and I were having a very respectful conversation via the online medium of Blue Sky, but there were people not being very respectful.
Oh, imagine that on social media.
It happens on the internet, that's for sure.
But you did the thing that is so great, which you were like, just call me.
Yeah.
So I called you and we wound up having a really great conversation about that went from like why y'all moved to Substack, which was a business decision that made sense for y'all. And that got us talking to the realities of being a business owner under late capitalism. And the ways that if you want to practice, an ethical approach under a capitalist system, like you got to make choices, like make the best choices you can, right?
Yeah, I've been running Raygun for 21 years. It's technically the only job I've ever had. I started this in college, and it's so big and sprawling that you realize every decision, there's lots and lots of little decisions. And our anchor is always, that we view, the internet in general as from a harm reduction lens. And then we're like, all of it is bad to a certain extent. And you fall into the trap of like, oh, is there good tech or is there bad tech? And you run the risk of being rug pulled where you're on good tech, but then that good tech had some bad investors. The investors sell to somebody. And so our lodestar is always our communities. And our primary business is our 12 retail stores and our printing. So I sit inside of our Des Moines store. I am currently located 6 blocks from where I was born, just up the hill in Lutheran Hospital. So geographically, I've not come very far in life. And if you want, you can just walk into the store and talk to me. So talking to people in real life does not scare me at all. And there's like a coffee shop in our store. There's a bookshop in our store. It's all people all the time. And so we've always kind of kept the internet at arm's length and have always seen it a little bit for what it was. Even in the heyday of social media, we never really wanted to scale up our social media because we know that, the money is in the distribution network. There are no $1 million ideas. There are only $1 million distribution networks. And if we start turning our distribution network over to these other platforms, we're kind of undercutting ourselves. So most of our revenue is the stores that we run. We control the leases. We even have our own wood shop and welding shop to do our own like displays. So how this shirt is designed, how it's printed, how it's displayed, we control all that stuff. And then we control our own online store that, you know, is platformed through Shopify, but we don't use like Instagram shopping. We've never done TikTok shopping. And so we've always been cognizant of how to keep the internet at a distance. But then at the same time, we're a unionized company. Whenever we talk about compensation, we all get together and talk about compensation. And it's pretty easy because you're like, yo, our payroll is 34% of our top line sales. So if we all want raises, we have to sell more or reduce expenses. And when rent goes up, when utilities go up, in the words of, you know, Warren Buffett, you're either growing or you're in slow motion liquidation. And if your sales remain flat, your rising expenses will just eat away at all of your profits and nobody ever gets raises. And so the contract negotiation stuff is all pretty simple in that we just sit down and look at what the revenue is, what the expenses are, and what we can do to make it pencil out so that everybody keeps their portion of the sales.
And so it just made sense. Like, we're just going to get rid of the Substack stuff. So for y'all, it was just like, are we going to pay? You told me, are we going to pay $20,000 to have someone else host this? You know,
Yeah, at least.
or
I
are we
mean,
going
even
to
if you
just
went
go
to, yeah, so
with
our,
the free one and
yeah, so
save
the problem
$20,000
with,
that we can put someplace else?
yeah, I mean, the problem with when you're paying it is, so with 250,000 people, you could spend about $24,000. But then whenever you've worked with any of these companies, whether it's Klaviyo, Omnisend, they work like cell phone companies where the rate they give you turns out to be an introductory rate and then they increase it. And, you know, when you send more emails than you're supposed to, you have to level up and you move up to the next level, but then you never get moved down. You got to go back into the system and move yourself down. Otherwise, they overcharge you $2,000 a month. And it's one of those things where you're like, is everything a scam? Is everything like you are, you know, they just look at you as a way to extract revenue. And you're kind of like, all right, this is $24,000 to $30,000. We could switch over to Substack and we're essentially costing them money. Like we will make maybe $1,000 in subscriptions this year because all our content is free. So we are essentially Substack abusers in that we're taking a $250,000 list that Omnisend, Klaviyo, Ghost would say costs them $24,000 to $30,000 a year just to manage. And Substack is now subsidizing our list for us. And we don't have the same concern with, but they control your audience, et cetera, because most of our audience comes through our web store. We control all those email addresses. And we don't really use Substack the way other people, we're not on there like hustling, promoting stuff, you know, getting onto the lists. For us, it's just a tool to send emails. And how economically we can send those emails is how we're going to do it. And then you get into all of these, you know, what is a, you know, good tech company, a bad tech company, and that can change. And it's the good brand versus bad brand moving out of the tech world, something like Costco. People are like, Costco is a great company. But then you talk about, well, there's food deserts and where are the local grocery stores? And you're like, well, in the 80s, when we stopped enforcing the Robinson-Patman Act, that allowed the proliferation of these direct to consumer wholesale things like Sam's Club and Costco. Those didn't exist in the 1970s because people hadn't thought of it. They didn't exist in the 1970s because they weren't allowed to exist. We had a system that encouraged small local grocery stores, which during the Reagan years, they stopped enforcing the rules that allowed that system to proliferate. And so Costco is part of this bigger problem of consolidation in, you know, the grocery industry. It is probably the best one of that group, but it is not a good company in that it's not really doing anything for the community. It's part of the problem. You know, the don't hate the player, hate the game. Costco is just playing the game that's given to it, but I'm not under the auspice that when a Costco moves to town, everything's going to improve. You zoom out even further and it gets even more infuriating in that European groceries are 30% cheaper than American groceries. We have the biggest boxes, the most consolidated food distribution, the most subsidized agriculture, and we still somehow pay more for groceries than Europe. Like, where do we win in that equation? It's so infuriating.
I was just gonna say, so we usually talk to like independent creators. So I do think that you belong on the show because I think what you did, of course, you obviously belong on the show, but it's so interesting to talk to someone who's made the move from selling shirts out of their selling t-shirts out of their trunk of their car, right, to having to know about like what was the name of the act? Like I don't
Yeah, I'd
know.
never
Oh, the
heard of it
Robinson
before.
Patman Act.
Robinson Patman. Like I almost wanted to do like a little like joke for people like we are now like a business infrastructure podcast. Like welcome to like, you know, Intuit talk. Like I feel like you're just on the level that a lot of our folks are gonna be getting to if they have the, you know, if plans succeed, right? Like if Mike goes from putting his own merch in at post office to having to do like big fulfillments and stuff, Mike's going to have to face some of the questions that you face. So when do you think you realized, oh shit, this is much more complicated than just like having the right politics and selling shirts?
Yeah, so to give you kind of like the quick where it went from where,
Yeah.
it's oftentimes you look at Raygun now and it's like a $15 million company. We have 12 stores, website, production facility. There's about 120 people who work here. We run the Onion store for them. We run several other large stores, some of which contractually we can't tell you which ones we run, but about 30% of the
those are all
company.
retail stores, like brick and mortar, or
They'll be online retail
okay,
stores. So
copy
we run websites for a total of 200 companies and organizations. So we do a lot of, since we're a unionized shop, we run like the Chicago Teachers Union web store, Minnesota, Iowa. So we run union web shops, we run company stores. The Onion is one of the bigger ones that we run. So it's a fairly large entity, and we employ, you know, graphic designers, screen printers, you know, woodworkers who work on the displays, shipping staff, retail staff. So pretty much every facet of it. We even have employed like seamstresses in the past to do our own cut and sew. We work with a couple of different factories, but like one factory is a unionized factory in Tennessee that does the cut and sew. So we could go from the actual blank cotton to the sewn product, and we follow the entire trajectory of it. But where that started was just me selling t-shirts in college that other people screen printed. And so I was out east, traveled around, sold t-shirts on the street for about 6 months. And then you realize a couple things pretty quickly. One, selling t-shirts in the wintertime outside sucks. I was so cold one time in Union Square in January selling t-shirts that I'm like, I should take this operation indoors. The other thing was that realizing your average person is not reliable. Like other people were screen printing my stuff, and I was like, shit, I don't even know how to screen print, but I could probably do it better than most of the idiots running screen printing shops. And I also wanted a niche market. And so I bumped into a friend of mine who was in New York from Des Moines, and she said, you know what you should do? You should just move back to Des Moines and open a store. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, I'm going to do that. You get some advice at the right place at the right time where everything kind of matched up. I'm like, I'm going to move back. I can move in with my parents. A buddy of mine from high school, his dad had a screen printing shop in a pole barn behind his house. I'm like, he can teach me how to screen print, and I'll open a store. And my wheelhouse is going to be Des Moines inside joke t-shirts. And I had no retail experience. I had never taken a business class. I didn't know how screen printing worked. I was still sketching stuff in Microsoft Paint. So it's not like my whole life building towards this one moment. Investors were obviously not lined up around the door to get in on this red hot opportunity. Opened the store in 2005. I was the only employee for 2 years. So you work 6-7 days a week. I printed every shirt, rang up every sale, designed every shirt, unclogged the toilet. After you clog the toilet, you know who you are. When you work in retail with a public bathroom, a lot of your most distinct memories are public bathroom related. It is, well, that'd be start another show. And then like hired employee, first employee number one full time was probably 2007. We expanded a little bit the store from 1,300 square feet to 3,000 in 2008. Opened our second store in 2009. Almost ran out of money in 2011. Wrote a book in 2012, kind of saved the company. Opened in KC in 2014. Moved into this bigger space in Des Moines in 2015. And then we've steadily added stores, but there's no board, there's no controlling investors. And so everything, it's like crossing the monkey bars. You're just going from rung to rung, and it's leverage and grow and leverage and grow. And holding on with two hands is the safest position to be in, but you're not going to get across. So at all of these junctures, you have to let go and swing over. And whenever you're swinging to the next bar, that's when you're kind of most exposed. And so your debt increases as you jump to the next project, but the next project should bring in more revenue to pay down that debt, so on and so forth. And so what we do now is essentially what we did in the very beginning, just the numbers are bigger. There's more people, but I still here every day, still work on the designs. And then at each little inflection point, you start learning. So this is a really long answer for how did I start learning about the Robinson-Patman Act. I opened up in this little neighborhood in downtown Des Moines, and all of our stores are in downtowns in every city we open up in. Just, suburban design makes me want to throw up. It's just American design in general almost makes me want to throw up. And so these urban neighborhoods are kind of the closest we get to the city I want to live in. And I thought to myself, how do we keep chain stores out of this neighborhood? So I read a book by Stacy Mitchell called Big Box Swindle. And she said, well, the main thing you have to do is change your zoning code. By the time a big box store wants to come into your neighborhood, you've already lost. So read this book. She talks about the Robinson-Patman Act and talks about changing zoning codes. So I worked for about 3 years to change the zoning code of our neighborhood to prevent big box developments in the neighborhood. And so I learned about how you regulate signs in a neighborhood. You technically, Des Moines says it can't regulate signs in the neighborhood because that would violate the Constitution's Commerce Clause, which is wild. That there's this expansive view of the United States Commerce Clause, but we can illegally put tariffs on businesses just willy-nilly. So whatever. But how I got to, grocery distribution and zoning was really just when I opened a store. It's like, this neighborhood is great. How do we prevent a Walgreens with a parking lot from opening right across the street from us? And when you answer that question, you realize there are usually structures in place that create the world around you. And that's how I kind of got into zoning. And it's anytime you're in any project, you just start learning so much. Every time I file my taxes, I learn something. It's been 21 years. And you work through these different rungs, and I felt like after a year of running the store, I was like, God, I'm like the smartest man in the world. I felt like I learned more, like I knew how to use a drill. I knew where to get lights from. If you needed to call somebody at the city, I know who to call. Ivy League degree, all my education just seemed so small compared to 1 year of running a project. And you just see how fucking hard it is. It's like, I almost never comment on other people's businesses and projects, because when you've done it and you realize getting something off the ground is just a Herculean task. Then getting it moving is even harder. It's like Mario, where every level gets more and more difficult. And then to grow that thing once it's moving is somehow even harder than that. And then to maintain relevance over a long period, it's like it's just a job. There's pros and cons to being an entrepreneur. And some people, the cons outweigh the pros. And when they throw in the towel, I'm like, yeah, I get it. It's like a rate of return. Probably half my day is spent doing stuff I don't want to do. And I run the place. Even when I'm doing it, I'm like, how is this possible? Aren't I in charge?
So, like you're saying, starting a business is hard. Running a business is hard. Scaling a business up is also incredibly difficult. Given the inherent difficulties in all of those things, what was it that let you know you could do it differently? Like, I think that's an important question for a lot of people on the creative side that have a vision of operating at scale but doing it differently. What was it that let you know you could do that?
It was honestly when I was going around out east and I would sell shirts during the day. So I would just stand there and try to get people to give me cash for t-shirts. And then in the evening, I would go into stores and see if the stores would want to like wholesale the shirts for me. And I met so many just stone cold idiots running stores that it was one of those like, you would think that I'm like, oh, I must be just brimming with confidence to want to start my own thing. Like, what? But I always thought they must have something that I don't have. They must have connections, knowledge. Maybe they went to school for it. I just like studied history, wrote, played in bands. Like, what do I know about business? And then you would meet these idiots and you're kind of like, oh, this guy doesn't seem. And it's like, how long you been doing this? He's like 20 years. It's like, it's been in business 20 years. And I'm like, fuck, like, I don't know if he can do it. I can do it. And a friend of mine's dad, I remember said, oh, I've always wanted to start my own company, but now it's like I got a mortgage and kids. I got all these bills. If I were going to do it all over again, I would just, right out of the gate, do it when I was your age. Like I had nothing to lose. And even my dad is a corporate attorney. My mom's a mechanical engineer. So neither of them are like in the business at all, not in the creative field. I didn't know anybody who ran a company. My dad was like, well, just stop going to school for a while. Just do anything else and see what you think. You can always go back to school. And so this essentially is what I did in my year off after college. It's just been 21 years. And at each level, it's kind of that, do you stay in? Do you keep doing it? Or you throw in the towel? People are kind of like, oh, did you ever think about quitting? Like all the time. I mean, the original store, I would sit in there. Some days, so if it's cold, wintertime, 3 people would come in all day. You're in there for 10 hours. That is a lot of time to think about how you should have gone to law school. But you signed a 3-year lease and you're kind of like, well, I'm in it. There are days when it's just like, yeah, this isn't worth the stress. I like, fuck this. I could make more money doing consulting. Yeah, I could ride this elsewhere. But I step back and you think about, well, what do I do it for? Is the stress worth it? This is still the best of all available options. So it's just a matter of getting in and doing it and then, seeing if you could handle it, but also knowing you can always get out of it. You're not locked in forever. You can try it and throw in the towel, and also know that if you run a company and throw in the towel and go do something else, anybody that knows what they're talking about, who has actually run a company, will be like, yeah, I understand. You think to yourself that everybody else who runs a company is going to like view you as a failure, like, oh, I couldn't do it. But everyone who has actually done it, you have a level of respect for other people doing it. It's like why a lot of business owners and creators hang out together. It's not like there's some oracle where we all meet. It's this one of these, you have this kind of unspoken bond, and the bond is how difficult day-to-day life can be. And other people don't understand it. It's the only thing I can equate running the store to is parenting. Of if you've nannied kids, if you babysat kids, that's similar to managing a store where you kind of know the ins and outs. But then once you move to parenting, you finally understand the, whole body encompassing around it. And so, yeah, it's kind of like anything. It's
But
challenging yourself.
the challenges that you're talking about right now, I think are the challenges that anybody faces running a business. It also seems like you're intentionally trying to do it in a way that's not the way corporations do it, or not the way every other. So in
Well,
that,
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
in
definitely.
yeah,
but
like I think it's Google's original slogan, right? Was "Don't be evil." And when I think of a non-evil corporation, and I know you're not quite like a corporation, but it does seem like it's your brand, and I think it's true, which is we try to do things in the way that's in alignment with the morals of our customers, right?
Yeah.
And
And
Mike was asking, and I think this is the question that I'm really curious about too, is how hard is that? Like, what are you, because when you said that thing about swinging on the monkey bars, one of the things I thought about was every time you take that swing on the monkey bars, there's someone that's going to come up out of the shadows and be like, "Want some help with that? We can,
Yeah.
we can, we can help you. Here's an easy way. Here's an easier way to do that." And it seems like Raygun has gone out of their way to not necessarily do it easy.
Yeah. And that's what's up. I one time, a buddy of mine who was in banking and working in like the retail sector or whatever asked me if I would talk to a friend of his who did investing in the retail world. And he's like, go explain your philosophy. And I explained my business philosophy. And he was like, shit, fuck. Private equity wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole, dude. And if I'd been quicker, I would have been like, I don't want private equity touching me with their pole, but I didn't. But I can pretend like I did. He's not going to refute it. And there have been times when you're just like, yeah, why don't I just bring in an investor? Like I should just bring in somebody. I'm tired of worrying about the money, you know. But whenever we've had those discussions, like I remember another friend of mine who was like a like small banker in town had a friend who was talking about investing. Like Mike came up and he's like, could we have a meeting with you? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I met with him and and he was talking about, well, we could invest and set up a board, yada, yada, yada. And we talked for about 2 hours. And the guy was like such an asshole. And we didn't get along at all. That when he left, my banker buddy was like, what did you think? I'm just like, are you fucking kidding me? I couldn't stand hanging out with that guy for 2 hours. We're going to be equals? Even wilder, last year, Kevin Harrington messaged me on LinkedIn. And I never heard of him before, but he's one of the original guys from Shark Tank. And I've never watched Shark Tank because the whole concept of it I found kind of stupid. It's just that, again, the idea that it's like, it's the idea. And then you find financial backers and that's all the magic instead of being like, well, it's actually just a shitload of work. And so Kevin Harrington was like, would you want to talk about investment? I was like, yeah, sure. So somebody from his office, contacts me. And obviously we're small fish. So the person from his office who calls me is like 23. And he's like, have you ever thought about private equity? And I was like, I have. He's like, what are your thoughts? And I said, well, if I had two offers, one, $20 million from private equity, and the other, burn my fucking store to the ground, I would just burn my fucking store to the ground. And he laughed and was like, wow, that's awesome. Why? I'm like, what? Just walk me through it. I'm a small transaction. The only thing you're going to get out of it is to scale me up and make it look profitable enough to sell it to somebody else. And in the meantime, I got to work for you, like 23-year-old with no knowledge of the industry, but now you're kind of my boss. And our priorities are totally misaligned. You're in as an investor, which means yours is an investment. And an investment's success is if it appreciates in value. Otherwise, it is a failure. I am in for the project. I just need it to stay alive so I can keep doing it. But I'm not in it from a dollars and cents standpoint. Then you get it under the hood. How do you extract more money from a company? You only extract money from the customers or the employees. What I mean by that is we needed to, our warehouse system was like kind of backward. And it meant that we spent a lot of extra time walking around and finding stuff, and the whole system didn't really like work. And it was kind of a pain in the ass for the employees. Now to change that system around was about $180,000 and, over a year worth of work. And it doesn't really add to our bottom line. It makes it a little bit more efficient and it makes it a little bit easier to grow, but we could have left it the way it was before, which would have been just a big pain in the ass for the employees. So I could have taken that $180,000 out and given it to myself and been like, look how profitable my company is. But that would have just made life more difficult for the employees. So it's not magic. Like, do you want your work environment to be one where people, you're thinking about their day-to-day lives and making the systems easier so you're around people who aren't totally stressed out? Or do you want to extract money from it? There is not this magic way to make a company with 7% returns suddenly a company with 14% returns. You just start either charging more to the customer, extracting money from them, or underfunding improvements and raises and extracting money from the employees. So life is difficult, not when you have tons of choices, but when you have two choices. Do you want a well-run, well-funded, fun work environment, or do you want an environment with maximum profits? And you're not going to have both of them, forever. And so I'm here every day. I work with the people. The best part about my life is the day-to-day experiences with everybody who works here. So I've foregone profits. But again, it's like I'm still getting paid. I do. This isn't like a woe is me. I think I do awesome. You're like, this is great. If I had told 16-year-old me what I would be doing now, I would have been doing cartwheels. And then 16-year-old me would be like, oh my God, I must be happy every day. And then I would have been even more surprised to learn that it's like, no, you're still going to be pissed off like half the time. It's like, what?
Well,
But I'm going to get everything I want. It's like, yeah, but that's just you. You're always pissed off about
yeah,
something.
Donald Trump is president. Tell 16-year-old self that. Like that's. I was gonna say, so I think that's a really fascinating answer. And it does make me think about that shift to being a manager, right? Which is, I think, the thing that I feel is just that potential question for almost all of our listeners, right? If you get to a place where you become a manager, if you stay in a business long enough, you are going to have to be a manager at some point, right? Like I know someone, I will try to keep the specifics very vague. They now have employees. It's a journalist with employees. And this person used to be a union steward. And now they have to do union negotiations. And this person was telling me, you have no fucking idea now now that I know what it's like to sit on the other side of that table, like what I thought were easy answers. Of course, you should give us more money. When they were shop steward, it seemed like a really easy negotiation. Why shouldn't management give us money? But now, whatever, it's a she. Management, it's a harder thing to talk about. It's a harder negotiation. Like, have you been there? Like, is that a transition for you where you feel like, oh no, like I can't, my fire for the proletariat has gotten slightly dimmer now that I'm managing proletariat?
Not really. Whenever I talk to other, business owners, the union thing, they always find like terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a mystery to me because you're like, here you are, you're this, I'll think of anything, I'm imaginative, I'm taking on a project, I've got a can-do attitude. But then this one word is kind of terrifying to you. And it starts kind of with honesty of, if you're an honest employee, or if you're an honest owner, honest employees will all look at the numbers and you're like, yeah, it's not rocket science. I mean, it's the math of running a company is not even complex algebra. It's just addition, subtraction, percentages. And when you're straight up with people, and it's like, if I was extracting money from the company and spending it on myself, like if I pull up in a Bentley and I were an employee here, I'd be like, well, now wait a minute. But when the owner of the company pulls up in like a used Volkswagen that I spent $4,700 for and lives in a house that I bought for $150,000, there's kind of less feeling on their side that they're being scammed. And so you show them like, hey, this is what the numbers are. People are paid based off of like, rank, longevity, that type of thing. You can still have, you can have dishonest asshole employees the same way you have dishonest asshole managers. Like, just because somebody is an entry-level employee doesn't mean they can't be like a fucking asshole. And in a negotiation, they might just be being difficult, but they're not working for like the greater good for the company, whatever it is. And they may have personal pet issues. But if there's other honest people in the union, they'll be like, you know what, that's not really an issue for everybody, and that's not something to get hung up on. And so it's like anything, I hate to quote Warren Buffett all the time, but just like, God, he says smart stuff. And it's like, you can't sign a contract with a bad person. Like, you sign a contract with a bad person, they dispute the contract, you can litigate it. You'll win in the end, but you'll spend years litigating it. It's like, just do business with good people. And I think that's, if like leadership is good, managers are good, the employees are good, then the contract and the work system will be good. But it also means you have to really keep an eye out for the assholes. Like, An asshole who manages nobody can ruin a work environment. An asshole can make a manager's life hell even. And those people have to be removed as fast as possible. Anybody with just a really shitty attitude that wants to make other people's lives miserable. Manager, employee, everybody. And that's the main rule I have for like management. It's like, yo, you have to have a good attitude. And it's like, sorry, but we have to treat people respectfully. That's where it starts, is in, personal interactions.
So I have a question about the creative of the Raygun endeavor because it's very interesting to me. So I was in Des Moines. That's where I got this shirt, at the store in Des Moines. I was there for a show. I was walking around downtown. I sort of stumbled into the store. I'm like, oh, I've never seen a place like this with this level of creativity in shirts, and a lot of it's in alignment with my own values. Like I've never seen anything like this. And I went on the website today, and so there was a, you know, Cash Patel report put out by the Atlantic a couple of weeks ago about he's a raging alcoholic. And I saw maybe last week people were saying J. Edgar Boozer as a nickname for him, and I saw that y'all had a shirt up for that
Yeah.
already. I'm like, wow, that's not only a quick turnaround, it's a quick turnaround that's like courting controversy. And I'm curious for your business, like what kind of challenges does that create when you're unafraid to sort of be that controversial that quickly?
Yeah. So the business could not exist if we didn't do our own printing. So the design, the printing, it used to be all just up on this mezzanine. So you would have like, I sat at one end, the dark room was on the other side of this wall. So we would design it, print out a transparency, make a screen, print a shirt. It would go to the store floor. So you could have a shirt made in under an hour. And we still can, that just the production facility is like 9 blocks away now. And so it starts with speed, and that speed is everything. In that, in the modern economy, like you might sell 75% of all you're going to sell in the first 24 hours. So if you're going to do something, you have to do it now. So we're a little bit like a media company dressed up as a t-shirt shop, in that we have a general plan for what we're going to do. But then if there's like breaking news, and it could be local sports related, it could be local politics related, we kind of change what we're going to do. We quickly decide our tack. We release something, and then it goes out as a shirt. It's in the Des Moines store that day. It's in other stores the next day. And all of our stores are connected through Slack. So all the employees can throw out ideas. We kind of look at them as local bureaus. So they post local stories that are going on. They post ideas. People give us ideas. So Slack is just this never ending stream of content and ideas. And the designers, we're more like air traffic controllers. I mean, we design in one font. Essentially, we have kind of like a template. You can design most of our stuff in Microsoft Word. So you're not really pushing the boundaries of like difficult graphics. But that's so that we don't get hung up on the style of it. It makes it so much easier when you're just doing one font, a couple styles. It's like sometimes your imagination expands when you limit your tools. So the whole place is built for speed. And then the rules of content is funny, Midwestern, progressive. So if it's funny, we put it out. If it's Midwestern oriented, we put it out. And then even if it's political and might be a little controversial, if we like it, we put it out. And so if it's within our ethos, whatever. Now, the stores we're in mostly red states now.
Right.
We're in KC, Missouri, which is even redder than Iowa, which is now pretty fucking red. We're in Nebraska. And the question we always get is, how do you stay in business, like offending people? And the content is the moat of our company, in that our business model is sitting on the floor. Nobody has copied it to date. There are plenty of locally oriented t-shirt shops and brands. There are plenty of progressive brands. There are plenty of sports brands. But we have, Bush Light jokes, ranch dressing jokes, and then we have a shirt that says the GOP creating government small enough to fit inside your vagina. We probably have more uteri on product than any store in America. And we're like a tourist stop in a red state. And it doesn't compute for people. But the thing that we have that everybody in America wants is freedom. Like, you walk into the store and you see the range of product. You're like, this isn't Target. And even if you disagree with the stuff, you kind of respect our ability to make it. So you
Hmm.
come in full on MAGA red hat thing, and there's shirts that are outright attacking you. Part of your brain thinks badass. Like, this
Hmm.
person can stay in business. And that's kind of what always saves us. But it also means that, it's in business, it's like surviving a bear attack. You don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun the person you're with. A lot of it is what your competition is doing. And nobody competes with us one to one because they're always afraid of putting anything controversial out. Now,
Hmm.
we're not putting out, controversial stuff for the sake of being controversial. We're not doing it for like attention. If we can stand behind it, we will. So if somebody says, well, I don't like this shirt, why'd you make it? And we say, well, this is why we made it. If it's just to get clicks or, just for attention, that's, I think, when you're at fault. But when it's part of your greater ethos, it is what it is.
I'm curious, like, how much of your business comes from outside your stores? Because, like, I was buying Raygun shirts. Like, once I discovered y'all, I was buying Raygun shirts, like, when I did not live in the Midwest, because, like, again, for people that aren't watching, like, my shirt says America Needs Journalist, which has been a staple, I believe, of, like, your, like, staple. I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of journalists that
Yeah,
have
that's
it.
maybe since 2016. Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah, and I have a pen too, and you support local journalism with it. Also, I just went to your site while Mike was talking to check out like what else was there, and y'all have a Rebel Loon Alliance shirt, which I may buy while we're talking.
Yeah, before the pandemic, it was about 70% in store, 30% online. After the pandemic, it's more, 50-50, even a little bit more outside of our stores. The stores are still the biggest single piece of the company, but we've, diversified income with online sales and stuff like that. And that does kind of get into if people are wondering about, nuts and bolts, like say you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to start a shop. The mathematics of brick and mortar retail, I don't think are the same as they were before 2020, in that when I look at it, I don't know how you would stay in business as a brick and mortar store without an alternative source of income, whether it's a website, whether it's a service or a spouse with money. The the rent has remained high, but like, giving you one example, it used to be you would pay more to be in a city like Chicago than in Des Moines because you had access to all these people. So the idea is, well, you have access to more people, so the real estate is more valuable. With the advent of, online ordering, DoorDash, all that stuff, you're in this perverse world now where movement is actually tougher in a bigger city. And so in a bigger city, you will have more people ordering from home and
Hmm.
you actually have fewer customers. So there's this mismatch that has not been sorted out in commercial retail, in that the rent for a bigger city is higher, but the benefits in terms of brick and mortar retail for being in a bigger city are not what they used to be, in that access to people around you does not really mean access to customers. And I think that's why you see a lot of retail stores closing. There's a restaurant renaissance in New York right now, but it's because there's tons of empty spaces
Mhm.
because a lot of the
Yeah.
retail stores are leaving. And people often, I don't know, all these restaurants are going to stay in business. But there's also, I read a stat the other day, I don't know, I can't remember exactly, but it's the rise of gyms where now a lot of, first floor retail is being dedicated to different gyms. Like, could be a yoga studio, could be a regular gym. There is a decline in small brick and mortar retail because the mathematics of small brick and mortar retail without an alternative source of income has gotten really difficult.
So we are a show for creatives. And so it's very important that we give people a chance to plug what they got to plug. And I think we think of you as a creative entrepreneur, which puts you, we are all right here talking creative entrepreneurs. I wanted to say that earlier, which is something I hope people take from this show, specifically talking to you, but also in general, is that we need to give ourselves credit for being business people.
Right.
Like, I think I shouldn't say what other people do, but I think for a long time I was like, oh, I'm bad at business. I'm bad at money. I'm like,
Yeah.
I got into journalism because I don't like dealing with all of that stuff. But it turns out I still struggle with saying good with money, but actually I do know what I'm doing. But that's all a lead up. You, creative entrepreneur, what do you got to plug?
Oh God. I mean, what am I supposed to plug? Like what I've been listening to or reading or anything?
No. So it's, what we're looking for is for you to direct people how they can support your project,
Yeah.
support your endeavor. So what's the best way for people to?
Oh, I got you. Yeah. Obviously it's Raygun. So if you Google the word Raygun, we are the first thing that comes up after an Australian breakdancer. Oh, it's like all that work with
Yeah,
that
that summer
SEO.
she almost
And
ruined you
then
that summer.
one Australian breakdancer. We would still get messages sent to us from people who were like, I can't believe you ruined the Olympics.
That's so funny.
And some of it was on social media, and you're like, what? But some of them were emails from our website. You got to like type them in. And it's like, wait a minute, you
Wow.
came to this website and you thought this was a website for an Australian breakdancer. Just goes to show you don't need to take everything you read on the internet. Some people are not putting that much thinking into what they're firing off into space. But if you find us online, be entertained, I guess, by the website, but especially if you're in any one of our cities. We have 6 stores in Iowa, KC, Omaha, Lincoln, Madison. We're on the north side of Chicago in Andersonville, and we're opening up in Chicago's Loop in just a couple of weeks at the corner of like
Nice.
State and Madison. So
Hell yeah.
it is a fun place to be. We view it as just this little island in an otherwise uncertain world, but it is meant to be entertaining more than anything. So the thing I love about sitting in the store is I literally hear people walk around and like laugh at product all day, which is meant to be laughed at. It would be disheartening if like it was all serious product and people were laughing about it. It's great to hear people walk around, explain jokes to their friends, explain other products. People are in here, they're having a good time. It's just such a nice place to like spend your day. And again, I'm like so lucky to be here. I always say that if I didn't know me, I would fucking hate me. It's like everything is kind of worked out, and it's not easy, but to your point of the creative stuff, this place is an optical illusion because the design is simple. It's not that hard to screen print. It's not that hard to do retail. The difficult part you only realize once you start doing it. People might look at podcasts and say like, well, it's just talking. It's like, yeah. I remember there was a tech guy who was like, I wish I could do what you do. It's just like hang out and come up with funny t-shirts. And you're just like, wow, what a dick. But he thought of what he did was so difficult. Whereas I looked at it as like, wait, you've got like $6 million in investor back. Like you're playing with house money. And I just was like, oh, is that all I do? And I just have like so much respect for anybody who is out there doing it. There's people who watch and there's people who participate, and anybody who has stepped in to participate is just so impressive to me. I don't know. I look out at the world and like how many awesome things people do. You can spend like your whole day looking at amazing things that people are putting out there. And I'm glad to be just one small part of that network of people kind of taking the baton of creativity through my lifetime, passing it to somebody else. And it kind of goes on and on and on. And there's a lot of bad stuff in the world, obviously, but on the creative side, it never ceases to amaze me how many incredible things humans have created.
What a wonderful note to end on.
Really, and thank you for the time today, and I think for giving us insight into a different way of doing things we don't often get to hear. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having me.